Welcome to Growth Uncut, a podcast that talks about upgrading justice and speaks to people from around the world who have different ideas about how we can make the criminal justice system more effective, humane, and compassionate. And today I am joined by Michael, and I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Please tell me, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks very much, Sarah. And it's great to be hosted by yourself and Growth Uncut. Yeah, very short and sharp. I'm currently the engagement and advocacy manager at the Turnaround Project in Belfast. And part of what I do is going out and meeting with policymakers, policy shapers, organisations about how they can make themselves more open and aware for people that have been in contact with the justice system, i.e. been in prison or have been serving disposal orders or involved with probation, and how can they help reintegrate back into society and the community. So that takes me into government departments, statutory agencies, third sector organisations, corporate sector, and anything you can think of.
And what do you like about it? What brings you meaning from it?
Yeah, I mean, my story itself is meaning around. I've formerly been in a young offender institution in Belfast in the 90s, and a lot of this work sits close to what I do. So I podcast, as you know, I'm speaking to one of the previous guests of such. I write around where is lived experience going, the epistemology of knowledge, extraction, how that links into academia. I take part and I host events around academic institutions and criminology students. And we just started this new concept called Turnaround Talks, which is how do we take people with lived experience off the panel discussion format and put them in and around conversations that are more around strategic influence, impact, and the use of storytelling. Not for storytelling's sake, but actually how can we do something with this?
Wonderful. And in terms of your North Star, your personal ambition, to what would you love to see? What would be your upgrade?
Well, a really interesting question because I'm at that stage of life now that those existential questions are starting to gnaw
Yeah.
at the soul. Really, for me, the North Star is how many people with lived experience can I put into positions of influence, the momentum for this movement and whatever that looks like in terms of the movement, locally, nationally, and globally. That's my North Star. So if I'm still talking to you in 10 years, I haven't done my job.
I love that. And in terms of that sounds like that sounds like you're busy, yeah? How do you manage that? How do you because we need a lot of energy for this kind of work, right? And I guess I've been talking a lot about not only how we can upgrade the justice system, but how we can kind of look after the people that want to upgrade the justice system, right? So how do you how do you look after yourself and keep that energy and that motivation?
Yeah, another great question. I mean, I'm a big advocate of self-care. I'm up really early most mornings, and so I'm either sitting deep in thought and reflection for myself, or I take a walk, or I go to the gym. I love writing, so I currently publish a story a week to the platform Medium, and that helps me get out my thoughts around what's been happening in my life currently, what's going on in the lived experience space or the justice community, or what's going on in family life. It's not niche into criminal justice. It's as broad. So it could be around leadership, it could be around well-being, around self-care. So yeah, that's how I keep myself grounded. And I do all this before I actually start work. So
Yeah.
I'm going into work with a clear head.
Yeah. And if someone's listening to that and thinking, oh, I haven't got time to do that and things are really hectic and you know, what would you say would be the impact, or what would you say to convince them that maybe self-care is the way to go? What impact does it have on you doing that?
The impact of my well-being, physicality and psychologically, is I can't even describe. As you say, if people are finding it hard to manage their time or they're stressed, I always ask the question back, well, how long do you think you can sustain this for? And if you can't sustain it, what does that look like? Like it's going to be a negative outcome. So your body's going to come to a stage where it hits the wall and you crash out. And that could be you taking time off work. It could be spending less time with the family. You could be in the hospital or you could be at the doctor's for a number of different reasons. So I always say to myself, if I don't do this now for me, nobody else is going to do it for me. And I've two young girls. They're just about to turn 18, so they're not young girls no more. But when they were born, I always set myself a real target to say, I want to be the best dad in the world for them. And that means me being able to actively engage with it in whatever they're doing.
Mm.
Should it be sport? Should it be taken in places? I can't really do it if the engine's running at a quarter tank. I need to do it on full tank. So that's why I always, even the organisation that I work within, I'm always saying to people, for some time out of your day for just you. It doesn't even matter if you're sitting in a chair for 10 minutes and just distilling your thoughts, find the time to do it. Because if you
Yeah.
don't, it just keeps building and building, and then your system just crisis.
That's it. That's it. And I think, we see a lot of people that just care deeply, but they burn out, right?
Yeah.
I think I've definitely been at moments in my career where I've had quite significant doubts about whether I should keep going. But there is that, isn't there? There is just that it's, we very much are sprinting through this because we just see a lot of challenge, don't we? We see a lot of suffering, we see a lot of harm. And I think there is that. I've been quite impatient at times to think it's so straightforward. It's just so straightforward. But it's not, and it's slow, and it requires, it requires patience. So in terms of lessons then, so in terms of things you've learned about yourself along this kind of journey, what other kind of things you've learned about who you are from doing the leadership stuff around lived experience?
Well, I mean, I suppose I'll give you my top ones. One, I mean, deliver on what you say you're going to deliver. Because a big part of being in this space as someone with lived experience and influence and authority and someone people would go to is actually delivering what you say. It's like a promise or it's like a verbal contract. So if you say you're going to do it, you do it. Two, be an active listener, as he's just touched on. This space is very difficult and challenging. You hear people's stories of real pain, darkness, shame, and trauma, and that leaves an impact on you as the listener because it's vicarious. It actually goes into your skin, and the evidence will show you that on the data. So that's the second point. The third one, which we've just touched on, is look after yourself because this work doesn't move and there'll be nobody contacting me. One, if I can't deliver. Two, if they don't trust me in a certain way. And three, if I don't actually look after myself. You know the famous saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Well, a lot of people I know in this space are doing exactly that. You cannot do that. So that's the third one. And the fourth one for me is how do I bring others along in the journey? How do I bring people along with me? So it's great to be seen as someone with lived experience in this space and setting up programs and speaking to statutory agencies and being around policy and rating leadership. That's great. But if I'm not taking people along with me, I'm only really doing it for myself. And I'm not here for that because there's no impact.
Yeah. And in terms of, I guess, the Justice 1.0 stuff, the bugs, the challenges within the lived experience space, what would you say are the biggest kind of challenges or obstacles that that you're currently maybe seeing or yeah, experiencing even?
Yeah,
What would
like this is an ever moving feast, as you know. Prison populations vary, policies change, engagement differs. It's an ever moving feast. So the real issues at the moment that we're facing, particularly around challenges, is short sentence prisoners, no access to services, coming out and really jumping back into the revolving door, which is really challenging because we just looked at the stats around this in relation to prison numbers and then people that are transitioning into the prison system. So at any one stage over the last couple of years, there's been around 1,900 people in custody in our three prisons, but there's been nearly 4,000 people released in any given year. But then a lot of those people are coming back in because reoffending rates sit at 70 plus. So there's a real disjoint in that. Two then is how do we grow the opportunity in which the turnaround project is providing? So we do the transitional employment, which is support them in that first phase. How do we link them into mainstream, which is the next part? And then how do we provide a space where people feel hope, trusted, valued, seen? To move them into a space, whatever that space is in terms of their personal pathway or development, that they can get on with their life. So we don't keep seeing this. And I think that's been the biggest challenges, sir, for the last 50 plus years. And I'm nearly 50, so anything before that,
I'm never real.
I couldn't comment on. But that's some of the biggest challenges we're facing at present. And again, the different justice jurisdictions. So we're in Northern Ireland, so our lived experience movement, that policy conversation, the programming, that's in its infancy versus where it is in mainland UK, England, Wales, Scotland, and in Ireland. So they're all at different stages. So our real challenge at present is how do we not only grow this locally for what
Yeah.
we're doing and get the support that's required, but then how do we do that on a north-south basis? And then does that even link into what's going on in the UK mainland? So there's three pictures of the jigsaw we're wrestling with the present.
And if you were thinking about the progress that's been made in your time in this space around lived experience specifically, what are the things that have pushed it forward? Are there any patterns in terms of the things that have helped things embed or helped politicians listen more or been more ready to accept a kind of lived experience voice?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of this, Sarah, and being someone from an academic background is evidence, and having officials in government departments, particularly justice, and then the statutory agencies actually looking at that evidence and what that evidence has actually meant in terms of impact and what that could mean for their service delivery, both either in a prison or on probation. So that's part one. Part two then is once they know that, how do they then start developing something within that co-design with people with lived experience? And then what does that actually mean in relation to policy moving forward? So at the moment, from an Irish perspective, they have started developing programs and supporting people with lived experience to develop leadership programs, to develop networks, to be part of experts by experience conversations, to be flying people to international conventions with them. So that's been fantastic. The key for us now is, well, how do we build that off this existing strategy into the new strategy, which runs out in 2027? And that's what we're currently doing. How do we build and solidify that? So it's not, well, we've did this for 3 years, but there hasn't really been an impact. How do we now start to grow that out?
Yeah. Because it's become a lot more popular in terms of lots of organizations seem to be, looking at lived experience through different lenses or incorporating lived experience within their kind of provision. Do you see any challenges with that? Do you see any problems with that? Or do you see any kind of threats to it being, I guess, fully adopted?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a real, I mean, from a personal perspective, I see a real danger in the lived experience space at present. Because as we were chatting about different jurisdictions, lived experience in justice or lived experience in the criminal justice system, you could probably trace it back to around 08, 09 in terms of language and words coming in and user voice back then, nearly 20 years ago. Then it started a bit by bit, started to creep in. Today, currently, there's movements around the world that have lived experience. Lived experiences, you have to involve people with lived experience. Lived, ex- uh, just so this is the conversation, which is fantastic, but we've got to be very conscious about diluting what that actually means. So the space at the moment has a number of organisations that are driving lived experience, have been doing for years. There's other organisations that are coming into the space and now starting to try and connect with that and utilising it. And then you've got others who have been in lived experience for a number of years, but want to try and set up their own organisation and do this and bring others along with them, right? So question is, what happened to the organisations that were involved in actually setting this up? Were they in this conversation? Because they've been doing this for nearly 20 years. So there must be learning in that. How do they then collaborate in a way that is not going to take away from their core mission and vision? So it's not going to dilute anything that they do. And then how do you bring people along that are trying to set up these separate organizations into that equation to say, there's been people doing this for 15, 20 years. You should be connected into them, not trying to set something up in competition with, because then it's not beneficial to people in the lived experience space to be trying to be part of 7 or 8 different things. And from a government policy and statutory agency delivery, they want to go to an organisation that has governance, has finance, has trust, has track record. That's who should be driving this. It shouldn't be a lot of individuals trying to get together and say we're the movement. That's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you see then if that isn't addressed? And there's something for me about the glue that connects everything as well, isn't there? Like there's power in the collective, but everything feels a little fragmented at the moment. And maybe that's how grassroots movements kind of take hold. But if we can't get that connection together, if that can't happen, how do you foresee the lived experience agenda?
It'll become completely disenfranchised. I mean, if the people that are driving lived experience can't agree on what lived experience actually means in relation to how they do this and do it better and drive those systemic reforms that we all keep hearing around justice, if they can't agree on what this actually means to them as an individual or organisation, people will get it completely disenfranchised and leave the space. That's the challenge and that's the danger.
Yeah, yeah. And my last question then is if you could advise or if you could wave a magic wand, one thing, so one wish essentially that would help the work that you do, get into your North Star, what would you wish from a very top level, that strategic level? So James Timpson could offer you a wish, what wish would it be?
That's a very easy one, Sarah. That James could bring others, and when I talk about our space, I'm just talking about Northern Ireland and Ireland, the present not going in the UK mainland. That those programs in relation to how we do this and we do it better, what the impact is both on the individual and on the community and on the city and on the family. That would be my greatest wish. How do we bring people along as part of this that can actually realise this vision and opportunity? At present, it's
All over the shop.
all over the place. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that would be my one. If you're speaking to James, please.
Hi, James. How you doing? Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Wonderful. If people want to learn a little bit more about the work you do or connect with you in any kind of way, how would you? I'll put all the stuff in the kind of chat below. But yeah, how might people connect with the turnaround project?
Yeah, easiest way, Sarah, is through website, which is the Turnaround Project, and then you'll see all the social links on that page, including the podcast and video uploads that we did from different events. So yeah, it's all on the website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming to chat with me. And thanks, folks, for listening. And if you want to know more about Justice 2.0, just visit our website, which is www.growtransformbelong.com. And you'll find out how you can maybe record an audio or record a podcast and submit that in, just so that we can all co-own and co-create the conversation around upgrades. So thanks so much. Thanks, Mike. Pleasure to see you. Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Sarah.
All the best.
Bye bye.